Rob, I'm kind of on the belief now that a person should just shut their business and start up their life. I am absolutely seeing so many companies that are just going out of business, especially these small businesses in the area where I live. And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
wondering, what is it going to take for us to either realize we should not do a business and just start up our life and
Yeah.
live
Yeah.
fine? Or is there something that businesses are missing? And you were speaking about it a little bit
Mm.
off camera.
Yeah. No, I think that the point that you make is a very valid point because we've seen this working with hundreds of small businesses over the last 6 7 years, and you even longer. One of the big things that I see with small businesses, and this is something that it took me even a while to realize, even though I understood it intellectually, but like to really get it deep down in your bones. Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in Cash Flow Quadrant, right? And other people talk about it. Michael Gerber talks about it in E-Myth. What's his name? 4 Hour Work Week.
Tim
Uh,
Ferriss?
Tim Ferriss talks about it
Mhm.
in 4 Hour Work Week. There's a lot of people that start businesses as a means of being self-employed. And what most people who start quote unquote businesses don't realize, because the tax code tricks us into believing that they're businesses, even though what they really are jobs.
Mm,
And there's a difference between running a business and having a job where you don't have a boss.
mm.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that difference. I was one of those people that, thought that as long as I wasn't getting a W-2 for a long time, then that meant that I had a business. And even when I thought, when I had employees, I thought that, oh, well, now I have when you have a business, and the biggest thing that I've seen is when you have a business, you have a system wherein there are things that happen that don't need you. Until that exists, until your business is running, and the three main functions of your business, right? Sales and marketing, operations, delivery, customer service, right? And then third is all the admin stuff. So put
Mhm.
HR, put IT, put just all the, bookkeeping, finance, all the rest of that type of stuff. Until you get to the point where all of those factors of the business happen without you, you don't have a business. You
Man,
have a job. You might have three or four jobs.
what is cool about that is I literally had to tell my virtual assistant. Now, it took me a long time to get to a virtual assistant point because I didn't want to spend money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the point. I told her, she sent me one of my videos because now, so here's our commercial. Rob and I, based on this episode, have put together a fantastic download for you. Now, it's not your regular download, right? Where you just get like, "Bleh." We have put together some absolute bangers, things that you can hang your head on, that you can look at and go, wait a minute, I can use that right now to get me some results. All right. Now, what we like to do is offer these to everybody pretty much for free. I know we shouldn't say free, but we do. We give it to you so that you can go out there and start using the things that we've talked about inside of the episode, see how they work for you, and then come on back and get some more. We're typically doing them every other episode. Maybe we'll get to where we're doing them every episode. But the point is, you have a chance to now download this. And when you see what I'm talking about, it's not your regular little one sheet 8 by 11 nothingness. We've got some fire for you. So take a look. We invite you to come on inside. See you there. I've given her access to some of my tools and stuff like that and says, rock it out because we're at a different phase of the business of what I want
Mm-hmm.
to do. So, and
Mm-hmm.
then she sends me an approval. Like, take a look at this. Let me know what you think. So I had to tell her a couple of stories. Story A was, I am the bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remove myself, to your point, and systematize things so that I am not the bottleneck. I said, let the data tell you if it worked. For example, now every now and then I'll catch like a spelling error or something like that. But I said to her, I want you to get to the point where you look at it based on what you have learned and what you have seen from all the other thumbnails, all the other videos, all this kind of stuff, right? All the tools that you
Mm-hmm.
now have access to,
Mm-hmm.
and then roll it,
Yep.
right? And then because I almost did not see the email. So that's one. So now
Mm-hmm.
my video is not going to go out in the same cadence that I wanted to get to a certain level. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. So I says, listen, do it, right? And even when she's talking to me, she says our channel. And I'm at first I was
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, that's my channel. What are you talking about? Our channel. But that's how you want them to think,
Exactly
right?
what you
And
want.
even
You
though
want
she's a
ownership.
contractor,
Yes.
that
Yep.
is the system that I had to employ. Now I got so I got one for our channel now, right? And literally he just
Mm-hmm.
started
Mm-hmm.
the other day.
Nice.
And all he's going to be doing is a very particular thing. Why? Because the data kept telling me, you're the problem, bro. It's you.
That's it.
It was
That's
just,
it.
I was like,
So often we become the bottleneck, and that's it. Yeah.
that's right. In so many different areas, I need to be the person that is doing this and then directing the work,
That's
right?
it. And
Directing the work.
and
This is what
so
I want.
I'm reading this book again, right? I've read it a number of different times, but I'm reading it again, and there's a part. The book is Traction by Gino
Oh
Wickman.
yeah, I got that book.
Yeah, and so he's the guy for those you all watching. He's the guy that's over the EOS community entrepreneurial operating system. And a lot of what he talks about is how you have to have a system to run your business and everything. One of the things that he said, and again, it's so funny. Sometimes I remember reading Eric Thomas say this one time. He was like, somebody came up to him and asked him, "Hey, what book should I read this year?" And he was like, he told him, "Don't read another book this year. Go back and apply something from a book you read last year and see
Yep,
what it does for your life." And so often, right, we need
act
to go
on it.
back and reread stuff that we've read before. I don't know why I didn't see it before, but it was so profound. One of the things that he talked about was there are three major functions in business, right? And he says it in a different way, but the way that I like, the way that I kind of simplified it for me is you've got firing a customer, you've got serving a customer, and then you've got dealing with all of the other stuff that is necessary because you acquired a customer and served a customer. Right. Those are the three things, right? And acquiring a customer, a lot of times people call it sales, marketing,
Whatever. Yep. Get
advertising,
that
right?
customer
All
in.
different, all the things, right? All the stuff until you have a customer, right? You don't have a customer until you got money in your hand or until you got a contract or something that's enforceable, right? And second is delivery operations. How do you serve the customer? What's the customer experience like? What's customer relations? All those different jobs, whether it's delivery, whether it's UX, right? What is it, UI UX, right? Um, and
Yep, how it
then
looks on the face. Yep.
yep, how it looks, all the customer journey, all the rest of that type of stuff, right? And then the last piece is how do you pay your people? That's finance. HR, how do you hire your people? IT, how do you make sure that everything works so that your people can do what they're supposed to do? Admin, right? How do you make sure that the trains are running on time? All of that stuff is in that kind of, they call it uh, general services and accounting, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and
GS&A. Yep.
GS&A, right? And the interesting thing about it is when you realize, like when you break business down to that clear of a level, it's really easy to see where you're spending the majority of your time and what's not working, right? And oftentimes, where you're spending the majority of your time is avoiding what's not working, right? So for
Man,
me, I know my biggest thing, my biggest pet
understand.
peeve is acquiring a client has always been the place that I avoid. And generally, it's because it's the part of my business that I feel the most, the most incompetent isn't the right word, but inefficient, I think is the
Mm-hmm.
right word.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I feel like when I'm working on acquiring client, I spend tons of time and it doesn't feel like I get the same bang for my buck as I do when I'm serving clients or when I'm
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
all of the day-to-day of running. Because like I can check off boxes. I'm a high achiever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a strength for strength finders, achiever is my number one, right? Those other two I can check off boxes all day. But for some
What does
reason
Gerber talk call it? He
being a
called
technician, yeah.
yeah. We love that. Doing
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah. Doing the thing. And I think that what's interesting now is, and we talked about this probably maybe 5 years ago when I told you I was like, I'm never building a business like this again, the
Mm.
way that I built this business. Every business that I build from now on, it doesn't matter what it's like. I have a nonprofit, I built it completely differently. Right. And what I learned was when I have an idea is great. until I have a team that can execute that idea, I don't have a business. And so now I get idea, then I go find team. And I don't move forward on idea until I found team
I
because
see.
what I'm good at is not all of the stuff that needs to get done for the idea. And so for our nonprofit, I love the way that it works because I went and found team. I probably spend maybe 10 hours a month working in my nonprofit, doing all the things that I do from presidents and chairman of the board perspective. But we have a team that goes and gets grants. We have a team that
Yeah.
serves clients. We have a team that
Yeah.
does all the things. I intentionally made sure that what my nonprofit did, I was not good at. Right? We do doula services. One of the programs that we do doula services for expectant mothers. Not certified, don't know nothing about it, ain't never had a baby, none of that. But I know that it's valuable. I know that it's important for our moms. And so I went and found people that have a passion for it, love it. It's what they want to do. I figured out how we were going to fund the initial piece. And if we wanted to expand, then they knew what they needed to do to expand. So we got grants, we got all the different types of things.
Mhm.
We've gotten renewable grants, all the rest of this. And I personally am the person who's working in the kind of visionary slash integrator role where I got all of the different parts of the team. And I'm like, okay, y'all work together and then y'all work together. And I am chief obstacle remover. Whenever there's something that pops up that they can't fix, then I get to look at it. I'm like, huh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then we figure it out and then they go execute.
It,
That's how I'm building every team from now on. I'm never building another team differently than that.
it's so funny. I've been doing a lot of because the season has started back with the students and stuff like that, so they're coming back in, and the coaching starts in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is so counterintuitive that I've been talking to them about is this: your business, it's a bad idea. It's terrible. What? Wait, they're looking around. And I'm saying
Yes.
it's terrible because until you can take the steps that make it better,
Mm-hmm.
just look at it like that. And it also is a psychological thing. I
Yeah.
says, this is how you keep your feelings from getting hurt. Oh, I got a good idea. And then people start chipping away at it, or competition, or when you hit the marketplace, when it meets the marketplace, starts chipping away at it. And
Mm-hmm.
now you're going, man, that was a terrible idea. And now what you're thinking of doing is chucking the thing out the window versus this ain't gonna work. This is bad. I know you shouldn't come in with that attitude, but that's not the point. The point is that you're
Mm-hmm.
managing expectations
Yeah.
until you can put things in place that says, "Oh my gosh, the thing could last on its own." By that time, it's systematized.
And I think to your point, right? It's not necessarily that you're managing expectations as in lowering them. I think that's what some people may hear when you were saying that. And that's not what I think you were meaning at all. The key is you were defining success and realizing that what you were doing was not getting you that. And therefore, that idea, right? Because a lot of times we appease ourselves because we act like doing something is better than doing nothing. Oh, it's not all the time. Like sometimes doing something is not what you need to be doing. Right.
Yeah.
And and I think that oftentimes doing something is not what you need to be doing, especially when you don't know what you're actually trying to do. There's
Mm.
so many people that start businesses, you remember this. We're coaching entrepreneurs. You get there and you say, so what's the ultimate result? What do you want this business to do? And they're like,
Mm. Where's the
I don't
goalpost?
know.
Yeah.
And they're like, and once you get to that point, like they've been doing it because people asked them to do it or because they saw that there was a market for it, but there's no overriding drive to it. And once we dig in, we can find it. But oftentimes people are moving towards just a direction. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you got to get much more clear on that because you got to figure out whether or not the vehicle that you're in is actually going to get you where you want to go. I always give the example, like if we're trying to go to London, you can have the best car in the world. It can be amazing, right? Take your Aston Martin, take your Bentley, take your Rolls Royce, take whatever car you think is amazing. It's not getting you to London, no matter how amazing that vehicle is. It's the wrong
That's
vehicle,
funny.
right? And a jankety but serviceable turbo liner or ocean liner will get you to London, even though it's third rate, fourth rate, right? As far as how good it is, as long as it's competent, it'll get you there. Because certain trips, you have to have the right vehicle, and a lot of times, I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're in the vehicle of self employment when they really what their goal is actually business. It's
Yeah.
not self employment.
We've been talking to him hard about that. It's something I heard today, man. So I'm listening to this podcast, and the guy says something that really led me into our talk today. He says every business is highly dysfunctional. That's how he started. And so that
Yes.
like got the other people's attention. So every business is highly functional, and this is what he said next. Because they are full of people, right? And without taking more of his
Yep.
words, he says, and people are messy, and if you get a bunch of them together,
You
that
just got a bunch of
messiness
mess.
compounds.
Yes.
Now, that's what led me to say, let's why don't we just shut this business down
Mhm.
and open up your life. Now that's metaphor, kinda, right, Rob? Now you know where I'm going with this. It is the
Mhm. Mhm.
monetizing of your life that then
Right.
becomes the
Right.
thing. And it's what I teach on all that. Let me show you
Yeah.
how to do those things. In other words,
That's it.
everything that happens in your life
Yeah.
is businessable. Just like you said, hey, any business could work. But I gotta
Hmm.
have one that that it banks off of something.
Right. And I think to your point, I think I want to break down a couple of things because I feel like they get talked around a lot, but I want to bounce some stuff off you and
Mhm.
see whether it
Yeah.
makes sense. Because right in the cash flow quadrant, Robert Kiyosaki talks about being an employee, aka you work for somebody and get a wage, trade time for dollars.
Yep. Yep.
Right. Then he talked about being self-employed, which basically means you work for yourself. You still are trading time for dollars. You're just getting more dollars for the time that you're trading.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. And for a lot of people, it's just right. If I can make $200 an hour and I work 40 hours a week, life is good. I got a good salary. That's good. Right. And I don't want to knock that. Right. Because there's something to be said about, excuse me, if you're going to be working for 40 hours in a week, you want to get paid the most you can if you're
Sure.
going to be working for 40 hours in a week. Then that right side of the quadrant, and I think this is the piece that a lot of people like. This is the part that kind of clicked for me. It was an aha moment. The right side of the quadrant is where big business and where investments lie. And what it is that you own an asset that makes money
Yeah.
rather than you being the asset that makes money.
That part.
Right. And so I think for a lot of people, what people feel like is, and even for me, I felt like there you had to start a big business and it had to take care of you at the same time or all the rest of that. And I really didn't understand that big business is an investment. You've got to have an investment horizon. You got to be thinking about it like I'm putting in this time or I'm putting in whatever I'm putting in. And here is the expectation of what it's going to yield to me. Randy, you know this being an investor. When you go and you buy a stock or a bond or a mutual fund or a real estate property or a digital real estate property, whatever it is you're buying, they used to always say this when I was in studying real estate development in law school. It was you make your money when you buy, not when you sell,
Right. Yeah.
right? And like I think that's the piece that so many people miss. It's understanding how you're going to make the money when you take it on so you actually know what good looks like, so you're actually looking for that opportunity. If I know that when I buy this I want to sell it for $150,000 and I'm buying it $100,000, everything I'm doing from the time I buy it is looking for opportunities to
Yeah.
sell it at $150,000. And anything that comes in that's $110,000, is $95,000, $130,000, all of those things don't distract me because they're not $150,000.
Yeah.
But when I buy it at 100,000 and I just want to make money on it, everything that is $101,000 and
It's not
up
defined.
feels distracting. Feels like, should I don't know, should I do this? Should I not do that? And there's so many people that when myself included, when I started my business, I just knew that I wanted to have a business. I didn't define what I wanted my business
Hmm.
to do for me. When
Hmm.
Dan Sullivan talks about this in 10X is easier than 2X, right? When you haven't defined what you want your business to do for you, then growth feels good.
Hmm.
When you tell yourself, when you know what you want your business to do for you, then there's only certain growth that feels good. There's other growth that actually feels distracting,
Hmm.
right? And I think that for a lot of the entrepreneurs that are out there, the struggle is you don't have to quit. As a matter of fact, I always recommend against this to everybody I talk to. Don't quit your job right now.
Yeah, I've been telling a lot of people that too.
Right. Keep your job and let your job fund the
The business,
investment in
that
your
part.
business. Let your job subsidize, right? And figure out how much is it going to cost me. Do the work to figure out how much is it going to cost me? Who am I going to have to hire? How many people am I going to need? What are their salaries going to need to be? What's the investment capital that I need to start this business at the level that I want it to be so that when it works, it's working?
Mm-hmm.
And let your current job subsidize your education. Let your current
Yeah.
job subsidize your building of that team. Let your current job pay for the first 90 days of that team. Go and interview those people. You got the nest egg and go run them and then have them have a 90-day point where they're either laid off or they hit their goals and now they're sustaining themselves. And maybe it's not 90 days, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, depending on what your experience is in business and launching products and things like that, and how many clients you have, and whether you're good at sales or whether you're just good at administration, right? Remember those three things:
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
acquiring a client, taking
Mm-hmm.
care of a client. But figure that out. I was just driving home today, coming from meeting with one of my mentors. And one of the things that, like, again, it was one of those eureka moments that I had. It basically was like this. I have been in my business, I have been thinking about who are the people that I could teach to do what I do instead of thinking about who are the people that already do what I do at a high enough level that I can hire.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, because, right, my background is teaching. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. I develop people. So, of course, my natural thought was, why don't I go find people that I can teach and that I can train and they can do what I do? And I was literally thinking back and I was just like, wait a minute. There's a bunch of people who have the same training, the same things that I know that are high level coaches at the level that I'm a coach that don't want to build a business. How about I go find them, create that job, and hire them?
Rod, is that you with music in the background?
Nah, I'm not hearing any music.
All right. Hold on a second. Because you know why. Hold on.
You got something playing?
So that's the big thing for me, man, is creating these set it and forget it businesses. Now, kind of like what you were talking about, if you're like, okay, how can I
Mm-hmm.
create the thing that has the system in it? And how can I come out of the idea that, you know what, I should just start up a life and stop worrying about this business stuff because, these people in here are dysfunctional, all these kind of things. And I've been thinking a lot about these set it and forget it businesses. It's what I've been building for
Mm-hmm.
myself. So get this, I'm at this networking event. Guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey man, everybody keeps telling me to come over here and talk to you because I've been doing so much in the AI space, et cetera, et cetera."
Mm-hmm.
So he says, yeah, I just started my business like 3 weeks ago. And he asked me a couple of questions. Now you get a couple of questions out of me before I either send you a buy me a coffee link or, you become one of my,
Mm-hmm.
Patreon partners or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he said something really key. And I says, "Hey man, stop thinking about the paycheck and start thinking about profits." Now, again, this is, coupling upon what you were talking about, how Robert Kiyosaki says, get to this level. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
think about profit. And he says, what do you mean? Because he was saying, well, what should I charge and all these type of things. I says, go in. And he had a long list of things he wanted to do for them. And I was like, mm-mm. Why? It's because you're going to busy yourself out of capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. And I saw the things. I was like, that sounds reasonable. Probably, something that somebody else did the same way. We're going to do all these things. I says, no, go in and do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I says, do one thing with this in mind. I says, totally 100% concentrate on the one area that they said, this is still a problem. So ask them, hey, what's still a problem for you? Oh, this thing right here. And I says,
Mm-hmm.
totally 100% go all in on that one thing, but then do it, say this to them. Let's do 30-day sprints because most contracts are like, you know, 3-month commitment and all that kind of stuff. And then halfway in, they're pissed off at you and they want to cancel the contract, blah, blah, blah. I says,
Mm-hmm.
no, you tell them. We do a 30-day sprint. If we continue to like each other, we'll continue on. right? Now, I borrowed that idea from a guy that was talking about, I think it was fire them all or something like that. And he was in the political campaign space. And he says, if
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
didn't do the work, our guy or woman didn't win, period.
Right.
So he's like,
Right.
30-day sprints. And I says, yeah, do a 30-day sprint. And I says, do a profit based 30-day. So at the end of 30 days, if you've done X over X, amounts over X, you get to
Mhm.
peel off some of
Yep.
that profit. Now they're looking at you and going, please don't go anywhere.
Hmm.
I said, and if you stunk, then you've got a couple bucks, but then they don't have this 3-month commitment and all that kind of stuff because that's the biggest fear. Hey,
That part.
here's enough to eat a little hamburger. Give me that. But if I get you to here, feed me some steak.
Hmm.
Right? It's kind of a little bit of the Alex Hormozy way. Hey, if I can do this, pay me this.
Yeah.
The irresistible offer. I says, now go all in. And this is where you just break your head doing
Hmm.
that thing that gets them that result that both of you, guess what, gets paid.
Hmm.
What's not to like about that? And that way you don't have to think about, well, I've got to capacity wise now do the work.
Hmm.
And I got to do this for 3 months and I got to see if they like me. No, man, they're going to love you if you give them results, period. You ain't letting
Hmm.
nobody out the door that's getting you results, period.
Exactly.
So,
No,
anyway,
I agree
that's,
100%. And I think that, a lot of companies struggle with that. Everything that you just said, I agree with, but I think that it begs the question, yeah, but how do we do that? And I think one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of businesses run into is simplifying what needs to get done. Right. And again, from my personal experience, it's one of the things that I ran into banging my head. Randy has sat with me a number of times, right, when I'm lamenting how difficult it is for me to do the marketing stuff that I need to do for my business. And oftentimes, what it is not being able to simplify your business to the point where you can explain it to somebody and say, I need this.
mhm,
And what happens, I know with some of my clients and a lot of the businesses that I work with, is you get to the point where you feel guilty saying that it's the other person not doing their job because you know that
yeah,
it wasn't as clear as it needed to be. And there's that space where you're like, I could blame them, but I feel like I'm taking the easy way out by blaming them.
yeah,
And so, question that I would ask is when you're trying to figure out that 30-day sprint, right? Because you look at a lot of those industries, like the guy was talking about politics. Politics is such an old industry that all of the metrics that you need to know, all of the things, there's a playbook that really quickly tells you whether you're good or not, right? It's just like I was watching Marshall Falk on an interview the other day, and right, for those of you all who don't know, Marshall Falk played running back for the Indianapolis Colts and for the Los Angeles Rams, one of
mhm,
the best running backs in the history of the NFL. One of the things he was talking about though was right, the combine is not necessary anymore because you can see film on everybody that's going to be at the combine. There's even sites and websites now where you get
yeah,
Hall of Famers who are going and breaking down film on these prospects of the draft.
mhm,
He's like, I want to
mhm,
hear what Charles Woodson thinks about a quarterback. I don't care what scout number 3 on this team or right
yeah.
over here thinks
Versus
about a
this
cornerback.
1 day stuff.
Exactly, right? And but basically what he was talking about was there are things that have made it so that you don't need all of the figuring out that you used to need because it's so mature.
Mhm,
The industry is so mature. I think what people struggle with though is most entrepreneurs are starting in an industry trying to find something that's not being met by the market right now. So it's new. And there's a lot of stuff that's new and it's really hard for them then to be as specific and
mhm,
as clear on what they need because they're kind of walking around in the dark trying to figure it out. So
yeah.
what would you say to people who are struggling with that saying I'm trying to figure out how to get clear on that?
I think when we look at something you said earlier, you said, hey, where are we going?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I use that example of if you're going to Chicago, how many ways could you get there? And all kinds of ways, right? What's the
Yeah.
most efficient? And then
Right.
I go, where are you going? I'm going to Chicago. So there's a clear go this way, not that way. Yes? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
companies are, I have to ask this question, or an entrepreneur, where
Mm-hmm.
do you want to go?
That part.
Oh, where do you want to? Oh, how have you been getting there before? This way. Okay. What are the results of that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously not satisfactory. I'm in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when there becomes an issue, it's always in, I have found, at least my experience has been that it's always in, well, I kind of want it to go a different way. Yeah, but this is the
Mm-hmm.
most efficient way. Yeah, but I kind of wanted to take the train and look around. Yeah, but get on the plane. That's the fastest way. Yeah, I don't want. And it's always that part, right? So that's where the
Yeah.
disconnect happens. But oftentimes I'm starting off and I'm saying, tell me exactly where you want to go, right? Well, I
Mm-hmm.
want more revenue. I says, look, let's just cut to the chase. I want more revenue so that I can do what?
That part.
Right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that I can pay back my loans, so
Right.
that I can afford to, what you said, bring on somebody else, so that I
Mm-hmm.
can, get a sigh of relief. Now I
Mm-hmm.
come in and I says, okay, here is a most efficient way to get there. Let's do that first for 30 days. If you don't like the results, throw me out.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I says, now don't mess with me in
Mm-hmm.
that 30 days. And of course, that doesn't always work because you've got egos involved depending on who you're talking to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go, well, I want to tweak this or I want to take credit for this, whatever it is. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we run into problems. But if we just do this thing at the end of the steps, it becomes a lead and lag measure moment, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
hard. Did I do
Yeah.
this thing that led to this thing? Oh, I
Yeah.
did. Repeat.
Yeah. I think that point that you made about, people not wanting to take and one of my coaches called it the fastest way to cash, right?
Ooh, that's good.
What's the fastest way to cash?
Yeah.
When you look at your business, when you look at, and I mean, I find myself falling victim to this a number of
Yeah.
times
Me too.
where
I do too.
what's the fastest way to cash isn't necessarily what I want to do. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I've had to learn recently is how to attach the fastest way to cash with the fastest way to get to do it the way I want to do it.
Wait, let me see if I say
Right.
that one more time. Everybody, if you're listening to this, I want to see something in the
Right.
comment section.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many of you also say, yeah, but I want to do it my way?
Exactly that part. And I mean, it's a common thing with entrepreneurs, right? But what I started to realize is I have to earn the right to do it my way. And the way I earn the right to do it my way is to do it the way that gets the cash so that I can do it my way.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be, however that may be, and figuring out what that cash is, right? I know for me in one of the businesses that I'm running, one of the things that I want to be able to do is completely offload inbound leads. I want to not have to do anything other than get on the phone with people who are our ideal customers.
Yep.
That's it. I want to completely offload
Yep.
that. And but that's where I want to be. But in order to get there, what I first have to do is be the person and get as many inbound leads myself, doing the things that I can do, get the fastest path to cash. And that may be doing some other things that I don't necessarily enjoy, right? I'm not the social media guru person, and I'm not the person that's always like I barely check all of my social media stuff. I check it because I have to. I was never a social media person. I didn't grow up in the social media space, but I do it and I engage and I do the stuff that I have to do in that space because it's one of the ways that you interact with people. Another thing that I do is I make sure that I go and I meet new people and I do connections and I do all the rest of that type of stuff. But I'm doing what I have to do so that I can then do what I want to do. Right.
Yep.
It's Dave Ramseyism, right? Like do
Yep.
what you need to do so that you can do what you want to do. Because if you do what most people want, you'll live how most people want. Right. Like, and that's really the space that I'm in right now. And there was a period of time I remember where I was stubborn in believing that there was a way to avoid that.
Man, it's so apropos for what we're talking about. I love that word. Y'all know it. To where, why I talk about set it and forget it businesses. There's something that just continually breaks my heart. And I heard a story today. I can't go too much into it because if somebody hears this and they go, "Hey, isn't that so and so?" But it was relative to the person got sick, and The person got sick or is getting sick, and now it's getting ready to affect their,
Mm-hmm.
almost 100, $100,000 job. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing the story and I'm emotional about it because why I do the monetize your life, all these different things is so that it provides you the opportunity to have a set it and forget it business, digital real estate, blah, blah, blah. Right. And last week I was sick, we couldn't do the pod,
Mm-hmm.
but I go
Mm-hmm.
on anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Man, my throat is all on fire. I can barely talk. I got I go on and I say to the audience, I says, listen, this is why. I says, I don't feel well today. I says, I'm hot. My throat is on fire. I don't know quite what I got. Hopefully I get over it. But I wanted to come on today and I want to do a video talking about why I do this monetize your life stuff. Y'all hear me talking about it all the time, but here's the why. Because if I go down, right, I want to make sure my money stays up. And and
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I'm looking at the camera just like right now. So that's why I'm showing you this stuff. Now, let me go over to an area, and then I went over into a app that I'm using that allows you, if you go down, this thing
Mm-hmm.
right here will stay
Mm-hmm.
up. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to do, and I think it was a specific social media thing, right? I
Mm-hmm.
says, because it is going to stay up even if you go down.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes, again, a time where I'm monetizing what's happening in my life. I'm sick. Why I do this? If you get sick, my parents died young, that stuff. So what happens after that? Right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
Rob, at the top of our conversation, we had talked about it. That becomes, should I shut it down to
Mm-hmm.
then go off and open up my life? But open up your life
Right.
to what?
Right. So
Shut
up
this
to what?
down that's
Yeah.
got me in it. I
Yeah.
can't move
Yeah.
around. To open
Yeah.
up my life.
And I guess what I would say in kind of in closing is cutting it down isn't temporary, isn't I'm sorry, isn't permanent. Like one of the things I love the Pivot podcast is one of the podcasts that I love to watch. And one of the things that I love that they talk about, right, is the ability to pivot.
Oh,
The fact that
I
you
saw those guys. That's Jackson and is that who it is?
that's no, that's the all the smoke one. But the pivot is Fred Taylor, Ryan Clark, and Channing Crowder. Uh,
Okay, I've
Ryan
seen
Clark is
that one
on
too.
ESPN. Yeah, he's a analyst on ESPN. They all played in the NFL. But the pivot, one of the things they talk about in the show all the time is they're like, what's your biggest pivot? What's the biggest turning point in your life? And I think that oftentimes, and this was something that it took me a long time to learn, right? Everything that you put down doesn't mean you're putting it down forever. It just means you're putting it down for now because you're going over to do something else. There are there are programs that I put on the shelf 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago that I'm now pulling back off the shelf and are
Yeah.
turning into actual things that are making
Oh
money.
my gosh. Same here.
And I think that so many of our listeners, if you're like I was when I first started, you're worried that putting it down or shutting it down for right now and opening up your life means you're never going to be able to pick that thing back up. And what I want to leave you all with is the understanding that shutting it down right now doesn't mean that you're going to never pick it back up.
Correct.
Shutting it down right now means that you recognize that it's not time, it's not ready, and it's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't the thing that you needed. You may have needed to do the work that you did over that period of time to learn whatever you need to learn, whatever the case may be. Be comfortable setting it down because you know you're going to be able to pick it back up. And when you pick it
That's
back up,
good.
it's going to be the right time. So that's the one thing that I would say for people for today.
That is so good. And it's like originally I wanted to call this, a little something different, like, okay, what happens after you shut something down? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of these businesses shut down. And the main thing I'm wondering about is what are they doing now? What are they doing now? So I can imagine if they get some of my teachings and start creating this content as they go, or as Gary Vee talked about, document it as you go. You now
Mm-hmm.
have something that you can chop up in a variety of ways. To
Mm-hmm.
your point, I'm actually taking an old course that did not work, made one sale, right? And I spent a year on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a abject failure, probably because I
Mm-hmm.
was the bottleneck. Okay, that's fine. But I'm taking it now, and now with the tools that I have, Rob, I put one episode in, 27-minute module series,
Mhm.
and the just listening to it in clip format, I'm like, man, this is good. You know, with my experience,
Yep.
if I heard
Yep.
this, I would be like, this is, I needed it in that dose.
That's the thing. It might have been the wrong dose. It might have been the wrong time, right? And case in point, like just to give you all this, and again, there's a movie. If you haven't watched it yet, it's the movie. I think we talked about it a couple times on the pod now, but it's the Pharrell Williams biopic, right? They did a documentary, but it's Lego style, so all the
Oh,
characters
I
are
heard
Lego.
about that.
Yeah, it
He
was
actually
really
did
good.
that one, didn't
Yeah, he worked with Lego
he?
to
Yeah, yeah.
do it, and so he was one of the EPs on it. But I thought it was phenomenal. But one of the things that it talked about was there was 5 years where they were making songs. Like they had already had a deal, so he had already made money with Teddy Riley, worked with some of the biggest producers in the world. All the rest is there. It's
Mhm.
5 years where he wasn't making any, headway. Nobody was taking the songs. Nobody was taking anything, and a lot of people would have, thought that something, right? Even he started to question himself and everything, but he had his grandmother who believed in him and said, "Hey, I see something special. Keep going, keep working." And so he just kept in the lab, kept working, kept working, kept working. The craziest thing about it is some of the songs that he created during that period of time when nobody was taking his songs
Mhm.
are songs that he then put out and became number one smashes 5 years, 10 years later.
Mhm.
The music scene wasn't ready for it then, but 10 years later, it's a number one.
See, that encourages me even now as I'm reworking some pods, I'm reworking them, putting them in different formats, doing different things because the wonderful thing is I got the content.
Mhm.
And if you got the content, even if the time, like you said, was not there, you now
Mhm.
can rework it. It kind of reminds me, there was this guy way back in, I don't know, in whatever day, 1920, 30s or something like that, who would take old books and he would put a new title on them.
Mhm.
And he would
Mhm.
sell them for like, I don't know, 25 cents or something like that.
Mhm. Yep.
But he made millions of dollars doing just that,
Right. He didn't write none of the
repurposing.
books.
I heard another guy today call it rehashing. I've done videos on repurposing, and now, man, I'm just putting it out. I told
Mhm.
Linda this. I says what I have been working on and what worries me a lot with regard to all this activity that I'm doing. I says, am I doing enough? Says so on some
Mhm.
levels, I need to take what I've done already and make more out of it. A.
Mhm.
B,
Mhm.
am I doing the right thing?
Yes.
Right. So it's more of it and the right thing. Because more of the wrong thing, well, guess what? So that's a
Right.
whole bunch
More
of
of it and
wrong
more
stuff.
clarity. Yep. Yep.
So I said,
Yep.
this is the two things that I balance out all the time. So I am now seeing, well, here's the data. You were doing it, you were bottlenecking it, you were like, sometimes putting stuff out, blah, blah, blah. Get somebody,
Mhm.
pay
Mhm.
them, be mad about paying them because, well, guess what? You don't want to pay nobody. I says,
Right.
but look at the results. Plain and
Yes.
simple. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, man, listen, good show today. I
Great
appreciate
show.
it.
Great show.
Y'all, we will talk to y'all on the next one. Do all that you have to do. Send this to somebody, comment, talk to us. If you want us to do some things for you specifically, you can hit us in the DM. All right. We'll talk soon.